Hello, welcome. My name is Martha Alter Hines with Living the One Light. All right. In this video, I'm going to talk about the new moon in Taurus that's happening on May 7th, 2024. And I'm really looking forward to dropping into these energies with you, both the seasonal sign aspect of this new moon and also the constellations of where it's going to be positioned, and just, yeah, really beautiful themes I'm feeling in all of it and that I'm being asked to speak to by the spirit world. So the main overarching theme that the spirit world named for me this morning in my praying, when I was asking what I'm being asked to talk about in terms of this new moon, is the theme of I am the wholeness of existence. I am the wholeness of the all that is. And this theme, I'll go into, where that shows up in this new moon itself. But of course, it's building on what we have just been doing in the last weeks, months. In particular, though, the energetics of the eclipse season and then this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And then today, actually, this day I'm recording this video is the day of the full moon in Scorpio. So I'm recording this on April 23rd, 2024. And tonight, where I am here in California, is going to be the full moon in Scorpio. And I made a previous video about the full moon. Definitely highly recommend going back and looking at that. And then I have done, a lot of videos about the eclipses and about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And I highly, highly recommend, if you didn't already sign up for the free event that I held last Friday, April 19th, it's still available. The recording is available, and it was exquisite. I mean, I definitely genuinely enjoyed what came through in the channeling from me, but really what was exquisite to me was all of you. And so those of you who were there, I mean, thank you. I think it was the most, I want to say the most beautiful gathering of you that I've held. Like the wisdom that came through each of you was off the chart. Just wow. And for all of you, any of you who weren't there or haven't signed up for it, the theme that came through in the channeling was really about our soul song. So what I was told by what I was told by the spirit world to do in the beginning of that gathering was to play the song "We Are the World," which, is incredibly moving, very powerful, and set the tone for what then came through in the channeling and then in all the sharing of those of you who were there live. And actually lots of sharing that has been happening since the live event in the free forum of the recording. So again, I'm placing the link to sign up for free. If you haven't signed up yet, you're very welcome to join in, enjoy it, join in the sharing if you want. But in the channeling, what came through that day was this exquisitely beautiful experience of us all joining in a circle of infinite cosmic beings coming into the soul song, the essence of the soul song of each of us individually, and then all of us together, joining in to this infinite collective soul song with Source itself. And what we did is we held Earth, Gaia, in the middle of that circle. So, I mean, again, sign up for the recording and you'll experience it yourself. But it was wow. And again, just deep gratitude to all of you who have been part of it. So what we're now in the energy of moving forward is still this energy of supporting us to be in that soul song that is ourselves and that is all of us collectively. So really letting go of the time of forgetting, which has included forgetting our soul song, forgetting that we even have a soul song, forgetting that we matter, really. And then coming into this remembering of the resonance of it, the beingness of it. And as I talked about in the video about the full moon, which is today, the day I'm recording this video, this full moon is in Scorpio, and it's squared by Pluto. The sun and the moon are both squared by Pluto, and Pluto, of course, rules Scorpio. So it's a very Plutonic and Scorpionic, Plutonian, Plutonian, Scorpionic full moon. Very powerful, very, very powerful. And it's really an energetic for me of letting go of any messaging that's still there that might say, there's doubt or there's confusion or there's shame or guilt regarding really being that soul song that is each of us. And then, so that's the energetic of this full moon that's now. But then we're moving toward the new moon in Taurus, which is going to be happening at 18 degrees of Taurus on May 8th, which is very, very close to the same place, 21 degrees of Taurus, where the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction just happened on Saturday, this weekend. And so I'll show you both the chart, the astrology chart of the new moon, and then I'll also show you where it is in the sky. And it's really, the new moon in Taurus is really, again, just, it's the next step. That's how I feel it. The next step in building on these themes that have already been so alive for us, with coming into our wholeness, coming into our soul song, coming into the reality of our true essence and our true value, the deep, undeniable, complete totality of our wholeness and our value. That's really what Taurus is about on many levels, and Venus is about on many levels. And but there's layers of this new moon that bring in other components that I want to drop into with you also. But I just want to give that background, that context, that's what it's building from. Okay, so first, I will show you the astrology chart of the new moon to give you that context. So here is the new moon on May 7th. It will be at, the moon and the sun will be together in the sky at 18 degrees, 2 minutes of Taurus. And nearby that new moon is Venus at 10 degrees of Taurus. And then Uranus and Jupiter, which are still very, very, very close to each other, and also very close to this new moon. So they met. So Jupiter and Uranus met on April 20th, 21st, depending on where you are in the world, at 21 degrees of Taurus. By this time of the new moon on May 7th, Uranus has moved to 22 degrees of Taurus, and Jupiter has moved to 25 degrees of Taurus. And Jupiter will be moving on into Gemini pretty quickly after this. So, it hasn't moved super far from the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction by the time of this new moon, but it will be moving relatively fast into Gemini coming up. So, but still at the time of this new moon, Venus, the new moon, Uranus, and Jupiter are all there in Taurus, pretty close to each other. And I'll show you when we see in the sky where they are, you'll see again, they're all very, very close to each other. Some other components happening astrologically at the time of this new moon is that the moon and Uranus and Jupiter all are trining Ceres. Ceres will be at 21 degrees of Capricorn. And Ceres is the energy of the Earth Mother. She's the mother of Persephone. There's many, many components to who Ceres is and what that energy brings, but certainly on a big level, Ceres brings an energy of unconditional love, of our connection to the earth, especially in Capricorn, which is an earth sign. And Ceres, I'm going to make a whole video just about this fact, but Ceres is in a long-term conjunction for several months right now with Ixion, Quawar, and Pholus in Capricorn, and that their conjunction will get actually more strong because Ceres is going to be going retrograde along with all of these beings, as all four of them will be squaring the nodes of the moon this summer. So yeah, I'm going to make a whole video about that because that's a whole phenomenon in and of itself, which is really powerful and I feel like is really important in the coming months. But just to simplify it, at the time of this new moon, Ceres in particular will be trining the new moon, etc. And so I feel that bringing in this extra element of similar to the Taurus energy, a sense of our wholeness, a sense of ourselves as earth, a sense of ourselves as the whole being that we are, and that there's a strong need to give ourselves unconditional love and to nurture ourselves. And also similarly, again, on an astrological level, at the time of this new moon, Hygeia will be very close to the North Node, and Chiron is still also pretty close to the North Node, and Mercury will be conjunct Chiron. So Hygeia is a goddess of healing. Chiron is the wounded healer. And so the two things in a chart that I look at typically around when there's an issue around healing, I immediately go and look for Hygeia and I look for Chiron. And at the time of this new moon, they're going to both be on the North Node. So they're going to be together. And so there's extra strong healing energetic at the time of this new moon. But when Hygeia is there in particular, even more so than with Chiron, this is true for Chiron too, but with Hygeia, for me, there's really an element of listening to our bodies and the wisdom of our bodies, and the fact that often our bodies know so much more than our mind does sometimes. Which again, Hygeia also reflects for me the similar energetic of the Ceres in Capricorn and all this Taurus energy, that there's this importance of deeply being with the wisdom of our bodies, that we are bodies, we are earth and light and spirit all as one. Okay. Yeah, I think those are the main astrological components I want to name. There's more. There's always more. There's always so much more. And I will, yeah, there's more. But those are the big things right this second. Okay. So then now I'm going to bring up the chart of the actual constellations. Okay. So here is May 7th in the sky. Here is this black dot is the moon. This big being here is the sun. And you can see on one side of the sun and the moon is Venus. And on the other side is Jupiter. And with Jupiter, you can't see it, but also right there is Uranus. So, even though on an astrological chart, they look like they're several degrees apart, and they are, but really in the sky, they're in the same part of the sky. They're all together. They're all clearly in a clump together. And not too far from them is the Pleiades, because Jupiter is getting closer and closer and closer to the Pleiades, as I've talked about before. And I think I'm feeling like at the time of, as Jupiter gets, I would say toward the end of May, when the sun is more closely with the Pleiades, then I have a feeling that that's when the Pleiadian energy is going to really drop in very specifically. It's not dropped in for me quite yet, and I think it's a matter of timing. I think, in another few weeks it will, but it's coming. I feel it coming because it's coming. It is coming. But here's what I want to really, really drop into, what's really calling to me about where this new moon and everything is going to be in the sky. So, okay, so I talked about this in my video, my video, the update on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So you can go back and listen to that one to get maybe more details. I probably won't repeat all of what I said there here, just so I don't bore you if you've listened to already that one. But what I do want to say at least some things so you get my point in case you haven't heard that one. So what I want to say about this part of the sky, which I find so fascinating, is that when in the last several months, when this red line is the ecliptic, it's the line that basically, from the perspective of Earth, the sun follows. And typically the other planets in our solar system also in general follow this red line. Not always precisely. Like you can see here, Mercury, is not exactly on the red line. And you can see that even Mars, anyway, basically our planets pretty much follow this ecliptic, but not exactly. The sun does, though. It's the line that the sun goes on. Okay. And as the sun has been moving in the last several months, it's been moving through the part of the sky, this whole part of the sky over here, called the celestial sea. So in the celestial sea are the constellations, which include Capricorn, which is the sea goat, Aquarius, which is the water bearer, the southern fish, which is where the star Fomalhaut is right here, the dolphin, Cetus the whale, Eridanus, which is the divine river, and of course Pisces, the constellation of Pisces, or the fish. Okay, and then so the sun finished its time in Pisces just before it entered the seasonal sign of Taurus. So just in the last few days, the sun entered the seasonal sign of Taurus and finished its time in the constellation of Pisces, or the fish. Okay, and now at the time of this new moon on May 7th, it's going to be, the sun and the moon are going to be sitting basically in the constellation of Aries, or the ram. It's also not too far from Cetus the whale. And it's getting closer to the constellation of Taurus the bull. Okay. But what I talked about in my video on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is that another way of thinking of the constellation of Aries, or the ram, is as the celestial plowman. So there is an older version of thinking of the constellation of Aries as being associated with Dumuzi, who is a Sumerian precursor to Mars. And Dumuzi was a god of agriculture. So there's an image of Dumuzi as the plowman, where he's holding onto the plow, which also the Aries constellation sometimes is called the plow, just the actual plow itself. So Dumuzi is holding the plow and it's being pulled by the bull. So in that way of thinking of this part of the sky, it's really, instead of Aries the ram and the bull, it's actually the plowman, so the Dumuzi, the god of agriculture, holding the plow and being pulled by the bull to work with the earth, to till the soil, right? And the constellation of Aries, or the ram, or the plowman, is overlaid by the seasonal sign of Taurus. And the constellation of Taurus, or the bull, partly is overlaid by the seasonal sign of Taurus and partly overlaid by the seasonal sign of Gemini. So if that's confusing, Kaylin Castell actually has done an amazing, wonderful video on her YouTube channel that talks about the difference between the constellations and the seasonal signs, if you want to learn more about that. But basically, at this point in time, our seasonal sign, so that like right now we're in the seasonal sign of Taurus, with the sun is in the seasonal sign of Taurus, that means that the sun typically, not exactly, but typically is actually, in terms of the constellations, is one sign behind where the seasonal sign is, if that makes sense. Okay, so right now the sun is in the seasonal sign of Taurus, but in the constellation of Aries or the Ram or the Plowman. Okay, so what we have going on in our relationship to the seasonal time and then the constellations is this overlay of energies. So it's not as simple as we typically think of it, right? If we think of these energies in this way, it actually adds this beautiful layer underneath what we usually think of in astrology, because we're now combining the seasonal time, so right now Taurus, with where the planets are in the actual sky, which for me is an incredibly important component. Um, and so basically this new moon and Venus and Jupiter are all seeping in. They're all in the seasonal sign of Taurus, but they're seeping in this energetic, this medicinal quality that I feel in the constellation of the Ram or Aries or the Plowman, and then getting closer, but not, it's kind of starting to enter the constellation of Taurus, the Bull. But they're in this relationship of this Plowman, Dumuzi, working with the plow and the bull and the earth. And what I talked about in that Uranus-Jupiter conjunction video is that I started to realize, oh, wow. So it's basically like we could think of this area, the constellation of Aries and Taurus, as really like the celestial shore, because we've just come out of the celestial ocean or the celestial sea, and now we're coming onto the celestial shore, where we have Dumuzi, the god of agriculture, or like we could think of it as a very positive divine masculine energy, working in tandem with, in a symbiotic wholeness kind of a relationship with the earth, literally tilling the soil, with Taurus, with the bull. And so there's this really beautiful combination, in a sense, of the divine feminine and the divine masculine working together. And at the time of this new moon, Venus, which represents the divine feminine, is it's in the sign of Taurus, which Venus rules, but it's also in the constellation of Aries or the Plowman, right? So you see there's like all these double layers of this beautiful divine masculine doing a dance, doing an interplay with the beautiful divine feminine. Okay. So here's the layers I want to drop into a little more deeply with all of this. So, okay, here's how I'm being asked to talk about it. So in my astrology course, which a lot of you are in, and you'll know this already, but what we're doing is we're taking a step back, basically. And with each month, we're focused on the seasonal sign that the sun happens to be in, and then whatever planets go with that sign, and the constellation that the sun happens to be in. So in the month of April, we've been focused on the seasonal sign of Aries, the planet Mars, and the constellation of the fish. In the month of May, we're going to be moving into the seasonal sign of Taurus, the planet Venus and the constellation of Aries or the Ram or the Plowman. And as we're doing that with each of the planets, what's coming so alive is this crucial need for us to really take a step way the heck back, in a sense, and stop and honor the actual being that these beings are. They are beings. They're alive. They're truly alive. Like, if the earth is alive, if the sun literally gives us life, right? It can't not be alive. All these planets are definitely alive. And they are beings. And so we're taking a step back, and we're taking a moment to be with, to honor Mars. And then we're going to take time to be with and to honor Venus and each of the planets one by one. And something that is coming so alive for me as we're doing that, and as I'm, doing more research on the actual astronomy of each of these planets, is that, of course, like I've talked about in other videos, we have projected so much onto each of these beings. Like, amazing. So I talked in previous videos about the fact that we've projected so much negativity onto Mars, that may or may not have anything to do with the actual being that is Mars. And we've named Mars after a god of war. Mars also actually is a god of war and a god of agriculture, actually. The god Eris, who's the Greek precursor to Mars, was more of a sort of demonic god of just war, and war for war's sake, and violence, for its own sake. Mars itself, which is the Roman version, was a mixture, I would say, of Dumuzi and Eris. So a god of war, but more a god of war in service of peace, and a god of agriculture. So more of a god of service, like protection and in service of society and life and of the earth. But Mars has 2 moons. And so another thing we're doing in the course is we're looking at all the moons of these planets too. Not all the planets have moons, like Venus doesn't have any moons, but a lot of the planets do have moons. Most of them do. And Mars has 2 moons, and humans have named these moons Deimos and Phobos, which means dread and fear, panic. So we've projected onto Mars all this scary, negative, violent imagery, right? And feelings. And in astrology, we've been scared of Mars transits, and it's considered a malefic, a bad planet. Okay, and then on the flip side, what's so interesting is we've done the opposite to Venus. So we have called Venus one of the benefics, one of the good planets. And we have called Venus, the god of love and beauty. Well, in reality, in mythology, actually, also, she was a god of war, a goddess of war. I mean, she's a goddess of beauty and love and war and fertility and all kinds of things. And the goddess Venus also had a lot of jealousy, and there's a lot of things in her own mythology that's not just all pure love and light and harmony. And when I sit with the actual astronomy, the science of the actual being, Venus, one thing that we talk a lot about is the fact that the Venus cycle is exceedingly beautiful. If you see the actual imagery of what the Venus cycle looks like, it's it's incredibly harmonious and beautiful. It ends up looking like a rose, and it's so just wow. And that absolutely fits with our associations with Venus being related to harmony and beauty and love and all of that. But at the same time, the reality of the actual planet Venus is that Venus, number one, is the hottest planet in our solar system, even though it's not the closest to the sun. Mercury is the closest to the sun, but because Venus has a very thick atmosphere, it it retains heat. So it's very, very, very hot, the hottest one in the entire solar system. It's also it's a very volatile physically. There's a lot of volcanoes and there's storms happening, and it's just really, really intense, right? Which isn't good or bad. It's just interesting to note that, especially in contrast with what we've projected on this being of being all sweet and nice and love and light, beauty, love, harmony, all of that. And so what I've been reflecting on is that when we talk about the masculine and we talk about the feminine or the divine feminine or the divine masculine, this is something I've felt into a lot because I've now held 2 symposiums with like 40 speakers each, exploring our relationship to gender and sexuality. And so I've talked to whatever 80 people about this subject, interviewed 80 people, and done a lot of deep dives into it, all of it within myself. And so something that I often sit with is that we have had a tendency to see the masculine as pretty negative, violent, all of that, which has been true. I mean, yes, absolutely, the masculine on this planet in recent eons has done a lot of destruction, a lot of negative things, a lot of violence, a lot of horrific things. Absolutely true. But we've tended to, in a sense, polarize toward that end of what the masculine is. And the masculine is not, of course, we know that it's not only that, right? That it also is incredibly beautiful at heart. The divine masculine is like the celestial plowman. It's an energetic in us that is in beautiful integrity, that is in service of life. It's in service of earth. It's in service of society. It's in service of taking care of what needs to be taken care of, providing food for ourselves, etc., for the world. And we've lost touch with a lot of that side of the masculine. So I'll come back to that in a second. But then on the other side is our thinking about the divine feminine. And so let's see, in the summer of 2020, so almost 4 years ago, I spent that summer, that was in the middle of the shutdown, COVID, etc. And my kids were with their dad for a lot of that summer, because they hadn't seen him for a bunch of months because they were with me. And anyway, long story, but I ended up having quite a bunch of weeks to myself that summer. And what I was called to do during that time actually was I went into basically a cocoon of going into a deep dive into my own relationship with the divine feminine and with goddesses. So I read, I don't know how many books about goddesses around the world and different versions of the divine feminine. And then I channeled the first 2/3 of the book, The Goddesses Speak, which is the 4th book in the Living the One Light series that I'm channeling. It's not published yet because it's not ready, because anyway, long story, it's meant to come out at the same time as The God Speak and Love Speaks, which are not finished yet either. So in their own right timing, those will come out. The first 3 books of the Living the One Light series are published and are on Amazon and on my website and everything. But these ones they're in an incubation time still. But what came alive for me 4 years ago when I was really diving into my own relationship with the divine feminine and goddesses. Actually, I'm going to come out of screen share so I can say this a little more directly. What I realized is that in my own relationship with my inner divine feminine, the way that I had been brought up, and I think probably a lot of us have been brought up, is to think that the feminine is really typically only about light and love, and like that stereotype of Venus that we think of, right? Beauty and harmony. And but when I started diving in, one of the deep dives I did was to go into a lot of the I read a lot of scholarly work on goddesses in ancient Buddhist and Hindu traditions. And because I grew up a lot of my life in South Asia, and in particular, actually in the area of Pakistan, near where a lot of this, it turns out that there were a lot of uh, Buddhist nuns who lived in a part of Pakistan where I lived as a child, which I did not know. And this is, hundreds of years ago when that was happening. But anyway, that is a whole story, which is really interesting. But what I found, of course, as we know, in these Buddhist and Hindu traditions, is that there are aspects of the divine feminine that are acknowledged and that are deeply revered, that they are not about being sweet and nice and innocent and being the good girl and all of that. There's Kali, there's Durga, there's, these intense, powerful aspects of the divine feminine. And those aspects of the divine feminine absolutely actually are also reflected in the mythology of Greece and Rome and all of that. If you dig a little more deeply, if you really listen and pay attention, like Venus, like I said, even in her mythology, she's not all love and light. She's also very intense. And so I could go on and on and on. I did a whole year-long series on goddesses with Verena Burrell. If you're interested, it's all recorded and all available. But my point is that the divine masculine and the divine feminine both have infinite manifestations. So the point of the divine, the Goddesses Speak book, which I channeled, 2/3 of in 2020, what the spirit world was basically saying is that it's important for us to be held to come into the infinite petals of the flower, the full divine flower of ourselves as the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the infinite petals. There's not just one way to be any of it. The divine feminine sometimes is pissed. Sometimes the divine feminine is intensely enraged, right? But in service of life. So like, for example, Kali energy is not, I mean, it can go haywire maybe and be destruction for destruction's sake, similar to Mars being more like Eris, where, violence, war is just for the love of war or something. But true intense Kali energy, to me at least, my feeling on it is that it's that intense sacred rage that's going to cut through illusion. It's going to cut through whatever it needs to, just boom, needs to go, so that we can be in service to life. And I think that over the last however many centuries, in more of this Western culture, which I'm at least part of, we've had this idea that what it means to be feminine or to be a woman, of course, is to be docile and sweet and kind and thoughtful and taking care of everybody else and all of that. And those are aspects of us, sure, but there's so much more, right? The divine feminine, for example, can be powerful and sexual and sensual and incredibly wise and alive, like fully alive. You think of Durga, riding on the lion and like tiger, I forget. But anyway, it's just, she's so alive. Like everything like when I go into that Durga energy, it's just like everything in me is just so powerfully alive. And when I think of the sweet, nice girl that I was taught to be, like my aliveness isn't really encouraged to be there. And also myself as a protectress is not really encouraged either. So there's this element of divine rage also that is very definitely feminine. There's a protector energy within the divine masculine, but there's also a protector energy in the divine feminine. I mean, ask anybody who, let's say, has given birth to a baby or is a mother or cares about children, or you don't have to be biologically a mother to have this in you. Certainly there's an aspect of feminine energy that is the mama bear. Like, try to get between me and my kids. That is not going to work. And that's definitely feminine energy. That's not a masculine energy coming through me. When that mama bear comes through, that's me as intensely feminine. And also, there might be aspects of me that are masculine that come through in that too. But it's definitely not only relegated to masculinity to be a protector. It's just not. Like, look in nature. You're going to see a whole lot of, you don't want to come across a mama bear, right? With her cubs. She's not going to turn into a masculine bear to protect her cubs. She's going to be a feminine female bear protecting her cubs. It's biologically, so intense. Okay. So my point is in all of this that I think what we're being held to do, what the spirit world is saying, is that we're coming back into this totality, this wholeness of who we are as masculine, as feminine, that we are both of them. We're all of the above. We are, all of us, feminine and masculine. And within our feminine aspects and within our masculine aspects is infinity of each. We're allowed to be all of it. Not only are we allowed to be all of it, we're meant to be all of it. We're meant to have this full, complete life that is who we are, come fully back into reality. So we're meant to be, the sweet, nice Venus, and we're meant to be the pissed Venus, like in service of life, not going crazy, like not just destroying things for the sake of destroying. That's not good. Let's not do that. But we're meant to be all of it. And then in terms of our divine masculine, we're not just only the negative, right? That's what's been really projected onto the masculine, is that it's violent and all that, blah, blah, blah. The other component of this is coming back to and recognizing, and I would say even looking for, the beauty of the masculine, the beauty of the divine masculine in ourselves, in our life. And so I'll spend just a minute on that, because I do feel like it's really important to give kind of a couple illustrations of that, because it's hard to access. I feel like the divine masculine is often really hard for us to access, because it's not necessarily easy to see, because we have so many examples in our world of an extremely destructive masculine. It's just true. Like the heiress version of it, the war hungry, power hungry, narcissistic, kind of demonic, evil version. I mean, yeah, that is, look anywhere, you're gonna see it. And at the same time, though, if we just take a minute, actually, what also comes alive, and what I've noticed is that it's so important to look for the beautiful masculine, both in men, people who identify as men, but in ourselves too, and just in the world. So I'm just feeling into, there's like, I could go on lots of tangents about this, and I'm trying to hone in on what's the most efficient way to express this, but that will really get my point across. Okay. Yeah, so a couple things. One is last summer, long story short, last summer I was I had done a lot. My own father died in December of 2022. And so for the next year, for about a year, I had my own really, really beautiful journey of healing around my relationship to the masculine and all of that. And I had a very profound set of healing, essentially letting go of a lot of my relationship to more of the, I would call it more destructive or difficult aspects of the masculine. And once I closed that chapter in myself in the summer of last year, all of a sudden, what came alive for me, it was like it just came rushing in. And I think I've said this on previous videos. It just came rushing in. All the ways in which the beautiful masculine has always been right there in front of my eyes the whole time. So, what had been a little more alive for me was my dad has, was a complicated person like a lot of people are, and he represented to me a lot of the more patriarchal colonialist aspects of the masculine and some really beautiful aspects of the masculine also. Um, but he was a Caucasian upper middle class man living most of his life in Asia, and so he definitely exemplified a lot of the more colonialist masculine ways of being, which are questionable without, going into it in a lot of detail. But um, yeah, and so that was pretty alive for me at, around when he died and after he died, and I was working through a lot of that. And then I finally got to a point where I really let it go. And then it just, the reality of all the beautiful masculine energy that has been with me my whole life and in my own being just came rushing in. So again, there were aspects of my dad that were really, really beautiful and I'm super grateful for and gave me a lot. I mean, truly, I don't want to polarize him either. Um, but what I realized last summer that just came rushing in for me was my relationship with both my grandfathers. So beautiful. So beautiful, so positive, just all the way around, unconditional love. I mean, wow. My relationship with the men in my family in general, like my uncle, amazing. So such a good, wow. Like he walked me down the aisle when I got married. It was just, yeah, such beautiful, beautiful relationship with him. My male cousins, amazing, amazing. I have so many good men in my family. Truly, like, wow, very, very lucky. And just so many things. It just dawned on me. Oh my God, wow, this is so beautiful. And I found in myself over the last few years, my own inner masculine actually is very, very, very beautiful and very positive. My inner feminine is much more intense, more of that intense feminine energy. My inner masculine is actually very peaceful and deeply, deeply wise, deeply beautiful. So I went on a whole journey with that in myself over the last several years, even before my dad died, actually. But last summer, that all just came to me in an extra strong way. And yeah, so one thing I realized is that it's so key that we look for the good. Because what we look for is often what we're going to find. True, right? And actually, it makes me think of, it's a little cliche, but it makes me think of the Mr. Rogers quote, in a time of disaster or crisis, look for the helpers. It's a similar kind of an energy. It's like, yeah, if we're looking for the truly sucky masculine, we're going to see it because it's everywhere. But if we pay attention and really look for the beautiful masculine that is also everywhere, we're going to see that also, including in ourselves. Even if I identify very much as woman, as a feminine, but I very, very deeply also identify with my own inner masculine. And it's when I went and did that work, I loved what I found. It's so beautiful, that my own inner masculine. And yeah, so anyway, again, many, many things I could share and go on and on about that. And maybe I will talk more about that as I talk about the Ixion Quawar little configuration. It's going to be really strong, especially this summer. I can say more about all of that. But I do think that, you know, just again, going back to where in the sky this new moon in Taurus is going to be, it brings in for me this deep calling and this deep need to sit with, to be with, to honor the wholeness and the totality of the infinity, the reality that there is infinite manifestations of ourselves as the infinite petals of the divine feminine and the infinite petals of the divine masculine, both so beautiful. And the feminine needs to be able to be sweet and nice and caring, and she needs to be able to be pissed. She needs to be able to be intense. Like the actual planet Venus is intense at the same time that she's beautiful and harmonious and has this incredibly beautiful dance with the sun and the earth. And, you know, it's wow, literally looks like a rose, her actual orbit. And then the masculine needs to be allowed, it needs to be seen, we need to look for the masculine that is beautiful, because then that's what we're going to find. And then that's what can grow. Again, you know, we know this, right? Whatever we focus on is what grows. Whatever we put attention on is what grows. So if we project that the feminine needs to be sweet and nice, and then the masculine is demonic and evil, then what are we left with? That kind of sucks. So again, we need, you know, this is really calling us into an ability to till the soil, like ourselves as that celestial plowman. We can till the soil. We can be in concert with the earth itself, and the earth nurtures everything to be beautiful and exactly what it is. Like every flower gets to be the totality of what it truly, truly is, you know? Every color of the petals is alive and beautiful and perfect. And so that infinite petals of ourselves as the divine feminine, we get to be all of it. We get to be the totality of life, not just one petal of the feminine and one petal of the masculine. That sucks. That's not real, and it does not feel good for anybody. But when we're allowed to be, and we're supported to be, the infinity of the divine, every aspect of the divine feminine, and the infinity of every aspect of the divine masculine, and then we're supported to bring them together inside ourselves and in the world, and they're meant to be the totality, the wholeness of life together as the infinity that they each are as well. Right? That's it. that's the beauty of what life is. Okay. Yeah. So the last thing I'll just say, I'll bring up the image of where it's going to be in the sky again. Not that. That was not correct. Let me try that again. Here we go. So the last thing I feel called to say is that as we're moving into the time of this new moon in Taurus, you know, with Venus there in Taurus, but in the constellation of Aries or the Ram or the Plowman, and Jupiter on the other side of the sun and the moon, in the beginning of the constellation of Taurus the Bull, or, getting closer and closer to the Pleiades, and the sun and the moon there in the seasonal sign of Taurus, but in the constellation again of the Plowman. Just like with any new moon, this is a beautiful time to come into deep ceremony, if you feel called, in ourselves. And because the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happened basically in the exact same part of the sky as this new moon, this feels extra, extra powerful for me. It feels like the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction basically primed the pump. It's like it set the tone that, again, coming back to that soul song, it went boom when Jupiter and Uranus were exactly together on April 20th, 21st. And then we've had this full moon in Scorpio, which is happening the day I'm recording this video, where we're able to let go of anything that's ready to let go of, so we can be that soul song. And then we come into this new moon in Taurus, again, very, very, very close to where the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happened, still with Jupiter and Uranus pretty much together, although Jupiter moving on a little bit. And the Jupiter-Uranus very close to the new moon, and Venus also right there with that whole group. And also not very far from the Pleiades. This feels like the pump has been primed by the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and now it's extra, extra, extra primed for us to come into deep ceremony. Again, if you feel called, in whatever way you feel called, deep honoring and reverence of the actual wholeness, the actual totality of life, who we are on every level, in the infinity of who we are, as feminine, as masculine, as divine feminine, as divine masculine, as divine child, as everything. Come deeply, deeply into reverence with that totality, that wholeness, the reality that we are the wholeness and the totality of life. And to come into that oneness of the soul song of the divine itself, of ourselves, and to set, again, deeply, deeply, deeply in concert with our soul song, maybe even from our soul song, to set an intention moving forward from this place. In concert with these beings, the actual planets, the stars, the constellations, the infinity of all of life, all of the spirit allies who are here supporting us, the cosmic beings, spirit beings, our human selves, ourselves as community, as humans, and ourselves as community, as everything, to come deeply into that reverence, that oneness, and the reality that we are the wholeness of infinity, literally, which is back to the theme that I was asked to speak on for this new moon. Okay, I think that's it for this moment. Yeah. So again, if you hadn't signed up yet for that free event that I held on April 19th, the day before the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, it's still available indefinitely. Sign up. You can listen to the recording anytime. Definitely still relevant, extremely relevant for ever. And actually, I'll say more about this in a separate video, but I'm going to be holding another free gathering on May 15th. And this one's going to be different. Again, I'll make a whole video just on this to tell you more about it. But this free gathering on May 15th, which I would love for you to go ahead and sign up for, it's available, is going to be new. It's going to be a whole different I don't know if anybody ever has done anything like this, and I would love for you to be part of it. We're going to be dropping in together to be with and to honor and to listen to an Oort cloud being. So the Oort cloud is the furthest part of our solar system, farther even away than the Kuiper belt. And Sedna was the first known being of the Oort cloud. But there are actually a total of 4 or 5 known Oort cloud objects, beings at this point. And so we're going to be together in sacred honoring of another one of these beings who has a very, very, very long Hawaiian name that I need to learn how to pronounce, but at the moment I'm just going to call her Lele. So, yeah, so we're going to be with this. I'm going to give a presentation about what I know about this being on an astronomical level, and what her name represents, just what I can learn about it. But then the real point is that I'm going to hold space for us. I'm going to then channel time for us to be with this being, to honor her, to deeply together listen to her. Because typically what happens, this being hasn't been talked about in astrology at all that I know of, even though people talk about Sedna quite a lot. And Sedna is, very powerful in the astrology right now. But I don't know any astrologers talking about Lele. That's my little nickname for her at the moment, at least. But she's very, very significant, very significant. And she's going to be conjunct the north node of the moon on June 8th, at 8 degrees of Aries. And I feel her really wanting to talk, really wanting to speak. And a big component of this is that when astronomers discover these beings, in astrology, we've had a tendency for expert astrologers to kind of declare what they mean in astrology. And I don't feel good about that. I don't feel like that is honoring of the beings themselves. And I don't feel like it's honoring of the opportunity we have in this time to, as a collective, come into a new way of being with astrology, with life. I feel really strongly that we are in a time now where the knowing of these things needs to be a collective experience, not an isolated one person deciding it means XYZ and then we follow that. That does not feel good. It does not feel right to me. So I am going to be holding, this is going to be the first time I'm going to be holding a co-remembering event, a co-remembering gathering. In this case, to honor, to be with, and to listen to this being, Lele. I will learn her name. I will learn how to pronounce it. It's very, very long. Yeah, she's beautiful, and she needs us to hear her. There's something really, really important and beautiful wanting and needing to come through all of us together from her, through her, in our relationship to her. I don't know what it is. I have guesses. I have my own sense of it, but it's really key and important that as we're moving into this time of remembering, of coming into this wholeness of who we are, that we also switch our way of remembering the knowing that it comes through all of us, through each of us, that some of us maybe have certain roles that are unique to us, and certain kinds of knowledge will maybe come through people uniquely. But there's also this co-remembering that needs to happen. And I don't know of it happening anywhere. Maybe it is. If it is, let me know. But that's what this free gathering on May 15th is going to be about. And I think it's going to be really powerful and really beautiful and really sweet, really, yeah. And again, the free gathering I held on April 19th, just the wisdom coming through each of you was, whoa, so off the chart, just so deeply touching. And for me, it was it was like, yeah, that's why I'm being asked to hold this May 15th gathering too, is that we're each deeply wise. It's not like just me or just XYZ person or, other XYZ person. It's each of us. It's all of us. And there's so much waking up in all of us, in so many of us. And we need to be honoring of that together, as opposed to, let's say, me, I don't know, learning about this being and then declaring to the world what it means, and then we move on from that. That doesn't feel right, doesn't feel an integrity for me, for my way. I think sometimes that can have its place, for efficiency's sake or whatever, but there's a deep, deep, deep need, a deep calling for us to do this in a new way. And so that's what I'm going to be doing, hopefully with you. Yeah. So I'll say more about that in another video. But please feel free to sign up for that May 15th event. Also sign up for the one that already happened, the April 19th event. And if you're hearing this video, even after May 15th, that's going to be available indefinitely. Both of them are available indefinitely. So please sign up anytime. Okay. Yeah. And if you feel called to connect with me in other ways, I do have some time for some limited, but some one-on-one sessions. Absolutely. I'm going to be starting these group sharing circles, small group sharing circles in May 2024. So if you're interested in that, you can submit. I have a short little form for you to fill out to let me know your interest. Fill that out. You can join my membership, which is $22 a month. I think that covers it at the moment. I'm sure there are other things. I also am going to be holding holding 3 free gatherings all in a row. That's what the spirit world's telling me to do. So I'm going to do it. So I will actually be holding another one around solstice in June, but that one's not ready to sign up for yet. Yeah, but that's coming also. And very, very, very clear that that's meant to happen. And that's going to be what I already am seeing, what I see about that and what I'm shown is that that's going to be a convergence of realms of infinity. That's what they're saying about that. So it's going to be a bit, in a sense, like a conference of beings of infinite realms, including ourselves. And I don't know what's meant to come through that, but we will be there and we will find out. So hopefully you'll join me for that too. Once it's ready for you to sign up, that'll be coming down the pike. Great. But yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. I would love to hear your thoughts here in the comments, as always. And if you like this video, I'd love for you to like. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would love, love, love for you to subscribe. That really supports me and helps me. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being part of this time of remembering and for coming into the wholeness of you, the wholeness of us. It's the greatest gift we could possibly give the world, is to literally reclaim and remember the reality that we are whole. We are the totality of everything. Beautiful. All right. Big hugs, and I will see you soon.